Hi, I'm Jennifer Wild, and you're listening to Sober Exposure. If it's about recovery, we're gonna cover it. It's like one big therapy session, but it's free. So thanks for joining our dysfunctional family as we uncover recovery with Sober Exposure. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome to Sober Exposure. I got a great attitude, and I'll tell you why, because I'm psyched about every episode. This episode, though, is going to rock. I think it's going to be off the chain, because what happens when you get two completely crazy off the scale ADD chicks together? It's going to make one entertaining friggin' show, man, right? The energy is like on fire here. And I don't know if you have listened to the last couple podcasts. You better just say you have. But it's been really kind of grim. You know, it's been about relapse. We've had death, overdoses, all this shit. So it is ADD Awareness Month. And for those of you that can't tell, I struggle from severe ADD. I have forever. And I met my match because the ADD Entrepreneur, Ari, we have invited on the show. And so, Ari, I just want to tell you a little background, like a little backstory here. This was before you were even a glimpse in your father's eye, but in 1986, literally, I was basically flunking out of, I think it was 11th grade. I was flunking out of 11th grade. And everyone's like, she's so smart because she can manipulate the shit out of me, but she can't pass a frigging class to save her life. She can't even pass typing. I took my typing final to a secretarial service and had them, I stole it, took it to a secretarial service. My final came back absolutely 100%. And the teacher was like, "We have a problem, Jennifer, because you need this credit to graduate, but you're my worst student and you never show up, but for some reason you got the highest score than anybody else." So I was diagnosed with ADD in 1986, and they said to my mother, she has ADD. And they're like, "She has AD what? AD what?" And it was before they called it ADHD. But I believe I have a little bit of the hyperactivity as well. And this is a sober show. So this is I'm making a joke about it. However, I really attribute so much of my addiction to ADHD because I'm self-medicating. And I think that's why I like cocaine so much. And we're going to get into that because, a regular person takes cocaine and they're like, you're bouncing off the walls. I'm like, holy shit, I could read a book. I could. Yeah, right. Give me another. Yeah. All right. Now I can go to work. So ADD, absolutely debilitating. So many addicts struggle with it. You are the rock star on educating on ADD, and you do it so entertaining, and you're so funny, and you're so awesome, and I love you. And so I would like to welcome you to Sober Exposure. This is Ari, the ADD Entrepreneur, who is an hour late because she's so freaking ADD. Right?
Don't announce that on the recording. That's terrible.
That's all right. Hey, nothing is sacred here. All right, so let's just start. Give me a little, just quick backstory, how you discovered that you had ADD and that you weren't like everybody else. Everybody else wasn't like us. When did you realize that?
Well, it's funny. So, so from a young age, it was so clear that there was something else going on with me, right? I was taken all over the shop. I was taken to see a child psychologist. And what's interesting is, so I was misdiagnosed as a kid. So I got tested for ADHD at 10 years old. And as a result of that and that misdiagnosis, that led to a whole spiral of other issues. So essentially at the time, because of the stigma around ADHD, the misinformation, even in the medical field, the child psychologist that I saw told my parents that I was too intelligent to have ADHD. So yeah, so it was a common misconception, and it's a common misconception now, to be fair. And it's funny because I was reading the report from that recently, and it said in the report that I'd been sent there because I was unrelenting and demanding.
Yeah, we are.
I was like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. But yeah, so it's pretty crazy. So what basically happened there was that they did a bunch of like cognitive testing. In the UK, one of the tests is called nonverbal reasoning. And I was in the 99 percentile. So what that meant was, the assumption was, because I was a gifted child, whatever that means, that I couldn't have ADHD, which is obviously completely insane. But the problem was, as a result of that, and my mum was buzzing about that, because again, at the time, because of all the stigma, like we're going back, oh, how old am I? We're going back about 18 years now. And because of the stigma at the time, and all of the ADHD was getting slammed in the media as being a result of bad parenting or too much TV and all of those ridiculous things. So my mum was really happy at the time that I didn't have ADHD.
Right.
And so I was just sort of thrust back into the school system, and it just went from bad to worse, because not only was I now undiagnosed ADHD, but there was no explanation for why I was behaving the way that I was. And I was really smart. So I was a problem child, but with a smart brain. So I was like,
that's a bad combination.
Yeah. So I was like getting into arguments with teachers and so on and so forth. And they were just like, it was a complex situation. It was a whole mess. So yeah, school was really challenging for me. And I ended up getting expelled in my
my girl.
Yeah. Well, I was so bored, and I was at an all girls grammar school. So in the UK, we have like 3 school segments. So we have a comprehensive, grammar, and private. So grammar is, when you're 11 years old, you take a test, and if you do well on the test, you can go to a grammar school. Like, it's still free, but it's like, and that was a terrible decision in hindsight, because it meant that I was then in a school that was very focused on results, and if you weren't sort of fitting into that mold of boosting their results, then they needed to fix that, to get rid of that in some way. So I always knew that there was something going on, but I just didn't know what it was. And of course, in the back of my mind, I knew about ADHD, but I was like, well, that's not me, because I was tested when I was 10 and they said that I didn't have it. So that was pretty unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I got a bit older, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and check this out myself, I think. And the psychiatrist was like, yeah, you're like the most textbook case of ADHD. It is shining off of your body like some sort of like metallic image, just
yeah. When I went in like 87, the dude was like, okay, so here's the scale. So this is like ADD. He's like, and they didn't call it ADHD back then, it was just ADD. He's like, you're here. He's like, you like are off the Richter scale, girl. So yeah, and it sucks, because it is such a misconception. Listen, I am no gifted student. Okay. I'm just average. I believe I have an average IQ. But the misconception that, if you're smart or gifted or whatever, that you can't have this, and one has nothing to do with the other at all,
Yeah, it's crazy. And to be fair, so when I say gifted, I was only gifted in nonverbal reasoning, which is, and it's so logical now to me, like it all makes sense, because nonverbal reasoning it tests problem solving ability and patterns and data. So it's like everything that you need in entrepreneurship, which is obviously exactly what I do and what I love and what just makes sense to me. I wasn't great at everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't like this weird genius kid. I just was good at solving problems, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But even now, like, and that's why I advocate so hard, because I don't want any child to experience that same stigma, that same misconception that leads to them missing out on treatment at a young age and battling their way through like a swamp of mud just to try and figure out themselves. It's really damaging. And I see it all the time in my community with a bunch of ADHDers, where there's a lot of trauma to undo as a result from a late diagnosis. And I was reading today that I think it was, and I might get this wrong, but I think it was by the age of 8 years old, but it might be 10 because I can't remember which. Shocker. Crazy that an ADHD child would have received 40,000 more negative messages than a non-ADHD child. Wow. So that's a lot of trauma to undo for ADHD adults, right? It's crazy.
Ari, now you're gonna have every friggin' therapist that listens to my podcast. They're like, I can release her trauma. I can get rid of her trauma. Shamanism.
Hey, look, if it's free, if you're a free therapist, like I take therapy brand sponsorships. Like, why not? Just
bring it on. Yeah.
never say no to
Collaborate.
free therapy.
So I gotta like, okay, so we're talking about this and I get nervous saying this because I don't want to say that somebody doesn't have it when they do it. But don't you think it's like, I mean, so every friggin' kid and their mother, oh, I have ADHD. I have ADHD. And it's like, no, you friggin' don't. I do. You know what I mean? Like, it's very over-diagnosed, I believe.
Well, is it though? So here's the thing. And it's a fine line because admittedly, like diagnosis has skyrocketed, especially in the last 2 years. A lot of that is off the back of the pandemic, especially in Australia. So I live in Melbourne, right? So we've been in lockdown over 250 days. So it's been an incredibly long lockdown. And the thing about ADHD, especially in women, is that quite often it gets to a certain point where you would have no idea you had ADHD because you've like developed these coping mechanisms, this like perfectionism sort of mindset. And you're getting through. And then one day, let's say you go to university to study a master's, and that's when it hits and you can't keep up anymore. Or you might have a child and trying to manage having a child. And then you're like, why can't I do this? And stuff like that.
Oh, that's why I'm such a bad mom. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
And then you like add in a lockdown to that and all the, trying to work from home and things like that. And then you add in the awareness. So ADHD has become a trending topic for better, for worse. And I have my own opinions on how I feel about that. But that's an awareness situation. So people who wouldn't have been aware about ADHD before are now. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot of people who really should stop self-diagnosing themselves off the guy on TikTok that is like pointing at all the symptoms.
Yeah. Hey, he pointed and he hit the point right where the text came up. So he must know, right?
Yeah, he's a doctor because he can, but and that's concerning. And that does concern me because the thing about ADHD is it's such a complex neurological disorder that it's really synonymous. It really matches with a lot of other different mental health problems, different neurological disorders. Like, it is important to see a professional about it. Now, I understand the fact that that's a privilege and it's easier said than done. It's expensive to see a psychiatrist, like it is, right? And I understand that can't always be the case, but if it is a possibility, I really recommend it, because if you have these symptoms, it could be anxiety, it could be PTSD, it could be borderline personality disorder. There's a lot of crossover.
Spectrum disorder. They like to, I mean, and a lot of them go hand in hand too. Like my son, he's supposedly on the spectrum. I think, I'm not sure. That's another podcast. But he does have severe ADHD, and so many of them like mirror each other too. Like you just said, the symptoms. Exactly. And, so treatment, I mean, this is kind of a good, what we should be talking. See, we're going to be all over the place because we're both ADHD. So treatment, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so first you have the diagnosis. So if someone's listening and they're not sure and they're like, do I have ADHD? I don't know. Sometimes I can never find my keys. I was talking about my producer, poor guy. It's like the guy is totally has to be on top of me. Like, oh my God, where are my reading glasses? Where's my vape? Where's it? And it's just like, there's just like a disconnect. And it's, I mean, I believe for so many friggin' years, I've been self-medicating my ADHD. And because this is a show for addicts and addiction, which I don't know, you didn't come out. I don't believe that you struggle with the addiction side. But here's the problem. ADHD is managed with narcotics by like Adderall, whatever. We can't take Adderall.
ADHD is managed with narcotics, and so that again is a bit of a misconception, right? And it's that stigma there, in the fact that unfortunately ADHD medication has been associated with narcotics, but a lot of that is because it's been abused by people who don't have ADHD. So that's given it a bad name in that sense. So, you get like college students and so on and so forth that are taking it and getting addicted to it. And then that like is giving it a bad name. That being said, it is very similar in its effects to, like, it still is an amphetamine. It's very similar in its effects to like a traditional
right. Well, right. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm doing a line of coke, but let's call a spade a spade. I'm an addict, and this addict, me myself, I cannot take Adderall. I've tried 100 million times. Every single time I take Adderall, I end up on the corner with trying to get the real deal. You know what I'm saying? It just wakes it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And I think that's so heartbreaking, because the problem is, and medication doesn't work for anyone, for everyone anyway. But I do have a bit of a thing in the fact that sometimes there's like ADHD and addiction has a huge correlation, right? And it is, like you said, a case of people self-medicating, unaware that that is the case. And the problem is, often when people go and they find out they have ADHD, they then they won't even be able to try that treatment because they have a history with addiction. And it's almost like we're in some senses punishing people who are just trying to self-medicate. Yeah, exactly. Addicts and people who are trying to self-medicate by not giving them the treatment that they need. And and it's a real issue that like really needs to be spoken about. And the treatment of ADHD as with addiction like really needs to be like viewed differently, like everything else with ADHD, education, work. Like we are wired differently. Like we have a different experience. And like I'm not an addict, so I've never been addicted to drugs. Have I taken drugs? Absolutely. My teenage years, I was impulsive, risk-taking, and bored. I was, of course, like I was going to raves and being 16 years old and being totally irresponsible. And I would just say I was fortunate in the fact that I wasn't an addict, because I was too poor to buy cocaine, so I was taking MDMA.
Believe me, you'd find a way if you were a true addict. Trust me.
Well, so yeah. I mean, it was a case of taking ecstasy, which is much less addictive in that sense. So, and I loved it, because my brain was clear and quiet, and it's the exact it mirrors the effect, not quite to that extremity, but it mirrors the effect that I have when I take my medication. And like for me, medication's been really beneficial. Has come with some side effects, but it's been really beneficial.
Adderall, do you mind if I ask? Do you take Adderall? Vyvanse?
So I take dexamphetamine, which is kind of similar to Vyvanse, but it's short acting. So Vyvanse is like you take it in the morning and it goes all day. I take short acting, which I prefer because it means I can work it around me, right? So for example, if I have a really long day and I'm like copywriting for like 8 to 10 hours, then I'll take like more doses so I can stay focused. But like,
can I just tell you, I'm like drooling right now, seriously, as an addict, because I love ADHD medication. I'm listening to this, it's like almost triggering me.
Oh,
really? No, it's cool. No, but I can't even tell you how many times I've fallen off the wagon and relapsed and went back out and used drugs because I was trying to manage my ADHD and manipulated some psychiatrist that I didn't tell I was an addict, and got the big orange Adderalls, the big ones, the big babies, and just abuse the shit out of them. So let's talk, because this is a sober show. I mean, what would you recommend? First, let's talk symptoms. Okay. Now I know like my first symptoms of ADHD, obviously in school, the teacher would be doing their lesson that was boring the shit out of me. And I would hear the person in the hallway, that's what I would hear. I would hear the person in the hallway, not the teacher. The symptom, I mean, it is so debilitating. If you saw my closet, you'd forget. I can't keep anything organized. I can't think anything together. A lot of times I can't even put a sentence together. And another thing, now I'm talking the symptoms, but one of my favorite things about, we're like Rain Man. I'm like Rain Man. Like, okay, so I was a radio personality for years, and everyone would be like, how could you like sit there and concentrate so on a production piece, or, you could sit there on Instagram because that's why the kids love the video games, because we're tunnel vision, so I can concentrate like a motherfucker on one task if I like it and I'm interested in it.
Well, so yeah, and that's because that's how you're wired, right? So essentially, like ADHD is a stupid name, because ADHD, like what we are dealing with is not a deficit of attention. We don't lack attention. It's a problem regulating attention, right? So what that means is if it's something that doesn't interest an ADHD brain, so if it's not something that's interesting, novelty, like something that's new or something that you're passionate about, like, then you don't pay attention to it because you're not wired to, because it doesn't give you a dopamine boost, which is a chemical that's lacking, like, in your brain. Not to get too boring and sciencey, but it makes sense for that explanation. On the flip side of that, when it is something you're passionate about or novelty based or whatever, again, we can't regulate that attention, so we have an intense attention instead, and that's hyperfocus. That's like a big symptom of ADHD, and it's awesome. I love it. Like, it's what's giving me the ability to, build businesses, build community, because as soon as I'm locked onto something, I'm obsessed, like, to the point where it's almost dangerous. Like, I'll forget to go to the toilet, I'll forget to eat. Like, if somebody talks to me, I'd just like
oh my gosh.
But I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, because we have this ability to focus, hold attention far beyond that of people without ADHD. So again, even the name itself is a problem.
Yeah.
People are watching these kids like, well, he can't have ADHD, she can't have ADHD, because at the end of the day, they can hold attention on this. And it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. It's sort of like somebody that loses their sight, they have better hearing or whatever. So you and I could sit there and concentrate on something for just a reasonable amount of time and then move on to something else and do but only like tunnel vision one thing.
Yeah, so I lost sound there just a little bit, but you're back now. So all I got was tunnel vision one thing.
Whatever. It doesn't matter what the hell I said. So
it matters to me.
Well, okay, so let's talk more like bad hair thing. So let's talk more about symptoms besides, like, what are some other there's a lot of different symptoms that make me who I am that I attribute to my ADHD. Just like you said, that's why it's such a stupid word, because I mean, just not remembering names, losing things, some other symptoms. I just want people, I don't want, like we said, we don't want you self-diagnosing, but just in case someone's like, does my son have this? Does my daughter have this? Do I have this? Do my mom? Yeah.
Yeah. So what's really interesting, so ADHD basically has 3 subcategories, right? So there's classic hyperactive, you're inattentive, and a combination of the two. That's the 3 subcategories. So that one's called combined. And basically with the inattentive one, it's almost like that hyperactivity that is external for people who have the hyperactive ADHD. So that's like the classic thing in your head of like the kid jumping off the walls.
Yeah, that was
like,
my son. Yeah.
So for inattentive ADHD, it's like it's in their mind, and that means, daydreaming, real trouble with listening, and staying on task, motivation. So I would say, like, things to look out for classically are, losing things, as you said, but chronically. And that's where the self-diagnosis thing is a problem, because everybody loses things.
Yeah.
ADHD is lose everything.
Right.
It's a huge difference. Memory, short-term memory is a huge problem. Again, that hyper focus, like, look out for that, because like it is not normal for a child or an adult to be able to focus on something for that amount of time. It's great, but it isn't.
It's like when people that are bipolar, and if they're on a bipolar high, they love their highs, that's one of the benefits. So and
that speaks to that crossover as well, because again, you could confuse manic bipolar with hyperfocus, right? And that's why it's important to see a specialist and really dig into that. And then some more of the like sort of lesser known symptoms, I suppose, would be and like it would be like more behavioral things to look out for. So again, if you've got a kid who is smart but isn't achieving as much as would make sense and things like that, or is like taking big risks, or is very impulsive, or interrupting in conversations, or like will just, so my partner has ADHD as well, and like the other day, because my brain, I have crazy, like all the time, it's constant, and I will forget that I'm not like having a conversation with someone. And I just out of the blue the other day just said to her, I was like, I wish I did a science degree. No context, no context at all. Like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, because in my mind, I'd gone through like this whole thing around, you know, all of the connections. And I was just doing the laundry and I was like thinking about laundry and like the soap in the laundry and how that interacts with the clothes. And next I've linked that to like 5 different things to be like, I probably should have studied science. I need to tell someone that. Bang. What?
Yeah, that's hilarious. And the interruption thing and the impulsivity. Oh, and then you get a double whammy. When you have impulsivity and you're an addict and I'm a chronic relapser, it makes sense. You know, I mean, that's such a huge thing is the impulsivity for me. And also, so Ari and I met on Clubhouse, which is it's a social audio thing. I'm not even gonna get into what it is, but bottom line is people talk and you kind of have to be invited to talk, and I'm always interrupting on Clubhouse. First of all, I can't believe you and I are even having that. Like, we're not totally talking all over each other. I'm really sitting on my hands, interrupting. Like, why is that? What? Because we just can't control our impulses.
Literally, also, I don't mind if you interrupt me. So in my club on Clubhouse, we have a rule, and the first rule, so my club is the ADHD Entrepreneur Club, is that we don't accept apologies for taking up space. So when people interrupt or when they like ramble on or go on tangents, sometimes we'll say, hey, like, we got to bring it round, or like, hey, like, we are going to get to you, we promise. And then they'll say sorry. And I'm like, I don't need your apology for having ADHD. So I don't care if you interrupt me, like, at all, just on that. And second of all, yeah, it is massively impulsivity. And here's sort of the journey of that is, you'll say something and I'll be like, there's a thought, and I'm like, I need to tell you this thought because A, I'm going to forget it, and B, I've stopped listening to you completely because all I'm thinking about now is my thought, right? And you're probably going through it right now. Right now, you want to reply to me because you're like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Because let me tell you about this time this happened to me, because that's what happens. And we're like panicked. And then because we've got older and we've learned to mask, we try and keep it in. And then it becomes like, your body's like, shake it. It's just like, I need to get this out. I need to get this out right now, but it's not socially acceptable. I'm old enough and I'm experienced enough to know it's not socially acceptable, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, that's
fire it. I gotta say,
like, I can't help it. It's coming out. Here's my thought. And it's difficult. People hate it. And fair enough. You know, I talk about this a lot on my Instagram, that a big part of like healing with ADHD and moving forward with ADHD is practicing self-forgiveness as an ADHDer, when quite often people aren't going to forgive you. And it has to be an internal job, because at the end of the day, interrupting people is rude. Not listening to people is rude. Being late for people's birthday events is rude. Like, that is bad. But you have to take it in and say, okay, I know that this is nothing personal. I know I didn't interrupt you because I don't care about what you're saying. I know that I wasn't late because I don't love you. I just have no concept of space and time. And I like, where even is the alarm clock that I bought 5 years ago in the box, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, the thing is that's where all damage comes from. Because we start to just hate on ourselves so much, because we're like, why can't I do this? Especially undiagnosed, like, oh, like, why do I keep repeating these behaviors? But when you know that you have ADHD and you've been diagnosed, it's about taking a step back and saying, okay, I need to apologize for being late to my best friend's birthday party. So you're like, okay, sorry. And they're going to be like, I'm still annoyed at you. And your job then, if you'd like to move forward, is to say, okay, you're still annoyed at me, and that's okay. Fair enough. But I'm not going to be annoyed at me, because I know that this is my ADHD, and I'm going to try and learn from it and move forward and take action in the future. Maybe I'm going to get that alarm clock out of the box, but what I'm not going to do is hate on myself for it, because it's just not, it doesn't benefit anyone. If I'm like, oh, Ari, you're a piece of shit, you were late to this again. Like, what's the point? There's no growth in that. You know, it's about being like, okay, this was because of my ADHD. I've done it 1,000 times. What can I put in place so that maybe next time I'll be only 10 minutes late instead of 20?
10 minutes late. Yeah. So yeah, I want to talk about holistic approaches to that. I just have to share a flashback that I haven't thought of probably in 40 years, but so I'm in 5th grade, and there's like, everybody's desk is in a circle. Like they had like the desks, like kind of, it was actually a U shape. all lined up.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone's desk is all neat and normal and whatever. Literally, it was like, who's that character in Charlie Brown where when he walks, there's the dirt. Do you know what I mean? Like there was like a trail. I can't. Do you remember, producer Nick? What was that? What was that character's name? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is, like, literally, and I'm not exaggerating to you. There was literally like a paper trail all around my desk. Like, my desk was a friggin' mess. My handwriting was a mess. I was a mess. So this is what is so sad, because this is what happens. So like, that's me in 5th grade, and that's trauma. People laughing, oh my God, look at her papers. She can't keep herself together. She can't keep anything together. And so it's like, it adds shame and trauma. And I'm just going back to that 5th grade moment when it was like, there's something wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. And back then in BC, they didn't know what it was, ADHD is. So we couldn't diagnose that. We didn't know what that was. I don't know. That was just a thought. And I guess it's you had to be there thing. But I mean, gosh, when I think back to that, it just hurts my soul. Like all those papers, this poor little girl, like she didn't know it was wrong,
Give her a cheeky cuddle, just hold her tight. And I mean, that actually, it makes sense as well. And I think it's really valuable in healing from that to understand like why that was. And I get the guilt and shame piece, trust me, especially from childhood. But the thing about how ADHD brains work is we have this thing around object permanence. So to give that like a simple explanation, like if you have a baby and you have like, let's say you have a box and then like a ball. And when you put the ball into the box, you test childhood development by seeing if the baby still, or toddler, whatever, knows that the ball still exists, even when they can't see it. But that's the really dramatic version of what happens with ADHD. So what happens for ADHD brains is once we can't see something, we forget that it exists, literally. Like we have a problem with object permanence. So that's why ADHDers don't like to keep stuff in drawers, or, why everything is out, because we need to see it to know that it's there. So for you and those papers on that desk, that was actually an organizational technique, or a staying on top of things technique, because you need to see everything so that you can commit it to memory and so that you know that it exists. So that's why they always recommend glass drawers for ADHDs, jars, anything that you can see through. And it happens with people. Like we literally will forget like our partners exist if they've gone for too long. It's pretty crazy.
That's great.
Who's Nick? Nick, are you there?
He's trying to tell me something. No, the dog's fine. The dog does not want to get down. So I just lost my train of thought. But you know what? There was something so funny, because so when we had our technical issues, and I was like, okay, so we have to just kind of take from where we left off and whatever. And you're like, that's okay. I take notes, right? You have your notes. But here's my problem, Ari. I can't read my notes after, because I'm so ADHD that my notes are so bad.
Look at my notes. They're not good.
They're better than mine, but they're.
So I have that's another interesting one actually. So a common like comorbidity. Actually, I don't like the word comorbidity. A common thing that comes with ADHD is things like dyslexia and dyspraxia. But what I didn't even know existed until I got diagnosed ADHD.
What's that second word? I know dyslexia,
but then there is dysgraphia, which is what I have. Which, by the sounds of it, maybe is something you'll resonate with. So,
are you terrible at directions?
Oh yeah, so
okay.
Bad.
Yeah.
So bad. But yeah, dysgraphia is like ADHD, but like in handwriting. So like, I will put capital letters in random. I'm not dyslexic, but I'll put like, and my pen. I literally hold a pen like I'm like trying to cling onto it for dear life, and like you can't like. It's a spatial awareness issue, so you can't like write on the lines or like.
Oh my God, I have that.
Look into it because it's really interesting. I mean, it does. When I got diagnosed ADHD, like the guy I was talking to was like, you probably have this too, but like, there's no need to treat it, because how often does anyone else see your handwriting? And I was like, they don't. Like, I do everything on laptops. It's not really proper. But at school, again, so problematic. And I was like, I remember being a kid, and the primary school I went to, I don't know if you guys call it primary school, the first school I went to,
Yeah,
like a little
elementary. Yeah.
elementary school, that's it.
Mm-mm.
Start writing with a pencil. And I remember this so intense because I'm competitive, like I'm fiercely competitive, I really am. And you start with a pencil, and the idea is the better you get at handwriting, eventually you make your way to a fountain pen, and it's like this big achievement when you're a little kid. And I just could not get past the pencil because I just couldn't write. And then eventually they gave me a fountain pen out because they were just like, this is just tragic to watch.
Yeah.
Now. Like,
she's never gonna make it. Just give it to her.
Kid, a pen, for God's sake, this is a nightmare. And there was ink because I hold the pen like this all over my hand all the time. And like, we're just gonna take that back. It's not really. Here's the pencil, which is funny, and like I don't care now. But as a kid, I was just like, I'm trying so hard to do this. I like, as I said, I'm competitive. Like I like to be very good at things. Like I won't lie about it. It motivates me. But when I'm losing, like I take it hard. Like I do. I take it hard. I'm a bad loser.
Join the club. Yeah. I don't know if that's an ADHD thing or just a human thing. Yeah. But I mean, like I'm blown away with this thing that you just told me about the handwriting, because I always said I should have been a doctor because I have doctor's handwriting. Doctors.
I'll send you some stuff on it because it's interesting. And
there's something else that I was diagnosed with as well, and nobody knows what the fuck it is. I was diagnosed with this in the 80s. There's like, she has something called, because I brought up the directions, and like I could go somewhere 100 times and I will still have to put my GPS. I don't know how to, I just can't find my way around the world. I can't find my way around from here to the kitchen. So, I get lost. So I was diagnosed with something called, and I hate diagnosis too. I do. I think, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I think so many things are overdiagnosed, but visual perception disorder. Have you ever heard of that? Okay. I guess it's like this is why I'm a terrible artist and I do stick figures. If you like draw a shape, I can't draw that shape. So that's a form of dyslexia, sort of, I guess. Yeah, I don't see shit.
I would argue that, and like, I'm not a medical professional, but I would say that's more of a short-term memory issue, which is an ADHD, massive ADHD trait, because it's not even necessarily like, is it because you're trying to remember the shape? And
even if I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know for sure. Like, definitely. Like I said, definitely not a medical professional, just well researched in ADHD.
I think that you are. I would take your advice, everything over a medical professional, because, like we said, a lot of them don't know. They don't get it. Just like doctors don't know shit about addiction. They don't. You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to a psychiatrist about my relapse. He's like, well, I think that you just need to go skydiving. I'm like, what?
To be fair,
I think you're bored.
Skydiving, but not because of that. Skydiving's great. Have you been skydiving? It's the best. I loved it.
No. And you know what? I got to tell you, I don't think I would really, I don't know. Not for me.
So it's funny. So like a lot of ADHD and addiction is obviously like, ADHD is like crave stimulation.
Yeah, I love roller coasters. I do. I love wild things like that. But yes.
Not all ADHD is. By the way, when I say ADHD is, I always say it generically, but it's not like across the board. And that's important, like associations make different.
Stimulate me, baby. Stimulate all day long. That's all. Like dogs looking for food. I'm looking for stimulation. Is it because we're bored?
I love skydiving. It's not because it's not that we're the word bored doesn't really work for me. It's because we're understimulated. So basically we're trying to, so dopamine, right? There's a chemical in your brain called dopamine, and that's responsible for your reward feeling and your motivation feeling. And that's what we lack, which is why, we struggle starting tasks and so on and so forth. So in order to achieve that sense of reward, that dopamine hit, we take more risky behaviors like skydiving to get that stimulation from that, to get that feeling. So it's always chasing after dopamine, which is where addiction comes in. Mm-hmm. Addiction is extremely dopamine driven. Drugs, very dopamine driven.
Well, look, even in the word, it's dope.
It's dopamine.
Give me some more of that dope. I don't care if it's brain dope, dopamine, or dope on the street in the corner. Just give me that dope. That's the whole mission of my life. Really? So how do we manage it? And how do we manage, because this is an addiction show, if this wasn't, I wouldn't be going here. However, we need, okay, so you're diagnosed, you have ADHD, ADD, whatever. And is this true that women or girls or whatever they say have more of the ADD and they usually don't have the H part? You don't like that, I get that.
Well, I don't know. So that's an interest. So what happened? So a bit of backstory on that. So what basically happened was, for years and years and years, girls were getting missed for diagnosis because often they present symptoms differently than boys. So a lot of people do say that more often that they do have the inattentive type of ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. I actually don't like that for a couple of reasons. First of all, because boys also have just the inattentive type of ADHD, and that risks now them getting missed for diagnosis because everyone's like, well, you don't have this, and girls have that one and boys have that one. Second of all, because a lot of women do have hyperactive and combined ADHD, i.e. me, and I'm assuming you from getting to know you. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's the case necessarily. And I don't like this, like, this gender separation because it's kind of damaging. But
it's a brain thing. It's not a penis or a vagina thing.
Literally, like it doesn't need, and it's always like, and it's always the way with stuff, especially once Instagram or TikTok get a hold of it. They're like, ADHD in women looks like this. And I'm like, you know, no, no, stop that. Especially when you see a boy doing it. And I'm like, you're doing this for likes and views. And I hate that because I'm like, you're not even a woman. Why are you talking about this? Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, in terms of, you know, managing it and stuff, it's different for everyone. And that's just the fact. And it's very much a trial and error situation. With children, it tends to come down to reward over punishment is what I've read. I don't have children, so, you know, it's a bit of a different one for me. But ADHD tend to be really, really negatively responsive to criticism. We really don't like being criticized because, you know, we have trouble regulating our emotions as it is. Tend to be very sensitive, and when you put that on a kid that's already being told how shit they are on a daily basis for stuff they don't understand, like, it's a whole thing. So, like, rewarding good behavior, not punishing bad behavior. With adults, I mean, I can tell you what it comes down to for me, and again, it's basically self-awareness, that self-forgiveness I was talking about earlier, and not feeling sorry for myself. But that's what works for me. And then systems and hacks and, you know, all the stuff I post about on my Instagram, managing small different parts of it, figuring out things that work, and then using that self-awareness to, like, really, and it's work. And that's like, it is harder for ADHD people to do that. It is harder, of course it is. But, and I always say this, if you are, you know, going to say that it's harder, then you also need to give yourself the accolade for when you do well. It needs to be a balance. Like, sure, it's more difficult for you, and you can own that, and that's fine. But if you have done something, like, you know, as simple as doing a morning routine every day for a week, that's like someone without ADHD doing it for a year. Like, right. Pick yourself up, like, give yourself that, because that is a big deal. And, like, that's where I see in the ADHD community, unfortunately, it lacks. Like, people are like, well, this is really, really hard for me. I'm like, yep. And they're like, and I can't do anything right, and it's shit. And I'm like, well, you did this. And they're like, so anyone can do that. And I'm like, no, it's different for you. Like, you have gone above and beyond, and you need to be proud of yourself. And I really feel that.
Yeah. I mean, you walk into my house and you can tell that it's run by someone with severe ADHD. I mean, it's a
I don't know, I like those plants.
It's a hot mess. You like what? Oh, the background? No, this is a green screen, baby.
I know. You have to tell me how to do it afterwards.
Yeah. I couldn't let anybody see what this house looks like. It's yeah, your plant. Yeah. I love it. Because she's looking at, if you're not watching it on YouTube right now, you should be, because we're hilarious. But I love us. I just love us. So I have.
I lost sound again. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hold on.
Nope. There you go. We're back.
All right. So, okay, hold on. Okay, so wait, blah, blah, blah. All right, I'm going to talk about meditation before we go. I'm going to talk about meditation. Because meditation for me, this is what's the catch 22 about our issue and meditation, because meditation has helped me so much. It helps me so much. But the thing is, anybody that struggles with this affliction is gonna be like, well, I can't meditate because I can't sit there, right? But
if you had this conversation with me a month ago, I would have been that person being like, don't talk to me about meditation. I'm not doing it. But I have changed my perspective on it.
Yeah. Yes, because once you get over the hump and once you get into it and you become passionate about it, like we do so much, then it's like, I don't want to be out. That's the only time I'm at peace. That's the only time that it's quiet, is.
So, I mean, I can't meditate. So I definitely can't meditate in silence. I'm never in silence. I don't sleep in silence. Silence is honestly like my kryptonite. I can't bear it. But once actually my girlfriend really got into my head about this. She was like teaching me that like meditation, mindfulness, like doesn't have to be like, sat on top of a mountain with a yoga mat and an incense stick. Like, it was a case of like, it's about being present. And then it really clicked for me. So I listened to a playlist to meditate on Spotify called Lo-Fi Workout. It's not up. It sounds like it's going to be really hectic, but it's not. And that's because it really focuses my brain like on the sound. So I'll just.
Yeah. Come on, so switch.
Technical difficulties.
It's that port. That's what's doing it.
Well, why did you get it in the cord?
No, it's the port. It's the port.
Okay. All right, hold on. Are we back? And we're back. Are we back? Okay. All right. We crashed again. So you were talking about meditation and the hi-fi Spotify thing. I can't believe I remembered it.
Lo-fi, but close. I don't know where we crashed, but yeah. So it's a playlist called Lo-Fi Workout, and yeah. So it has all these different sounds. So I'll just sit, chill, like on the bed. I got a diffuser. I like the blue light on it, like banging, and then like headphones in, and like because I love music so much anyway, and this specific playlist has like it's really chilled hip hop beats, but it has like different sounds that like happen, and it like focuses my brain in, because if it starts to drift, like I'll hear like a sound, I'll be like, oh, that's cool, oh yeah, I was doing this, bang, like straight back into that. And that's like changed the game for me on that. I'm still really shit at it, to be honest, but I do want to be better, and I do really see the massive benefits that it can have if you can get over that hurdle.
Yeah, it's life-changing, and no one's ever good or bad at meditation. I'm like
every time I say that, the person who's good at meditation says that back to me though. Every time I fail, I'll be like, I'm shit at meditation. I'm like, nobody's shit at meditation. I'm like, no, I'm shit at meditation.
Yeah. And I mean, I know when I'm in a bad place, when I'm having a hard time in my meditation. I know that I need to meditate more. Anyway, this is not about meditation. I've done enough shit on meditation the last month here.
But it's helpful. It's helpful.
Let me tell you, for my addicts out there that struggle with this affliction, that can't take the Adderall or the Vyvanse or all the other variations of it, Concerta or any of that shit, because I'm just going to come out and say, this addict, I can't take any of it. I can't. It's really the only thing I got.
But that's incredible stuff. Like that's incredible self-awareness though. Yeah. Like the fact that, as an impulsive ADHD and addict, that you're like, I really can't do that. Like I'm like, that's not going to be good for me. Like, again, remember, like I said before, it's about really like recognizing, like, that's fucking incredible that you have that, and that you say that out loud, and that you tell that story to people so openly, because like,
yeah,
that's
I hate it. It sucks. It does every time. I'm like, okay, so I'll just take the prescribed amount, and that's fine because the doctor said I can take it, and the prescribed amount. 2 days I'm chopping up the Adderall, snort it.
Just got it in like a, what's it called? Like a mortar and pestle.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh my gosh. So, all right. So on your Instagram, you have like all kinds of, like you said, hacks and all that stuff. What are your 3 key go-to hacks to manage?
Yeah. So first of all, definitely that self-awareness, self-forgiveness, and no self-pity.
Okay. Yeah. You just said that a million times.
But I'm going to keep saying it because until it drives home, because I think it's probably so important. And then probably, I mean, there's so many, but I really like tracking, like energy tracking or time tracking. So what that means is, let's say for energy tracking is you have a note, like just for a week, because obviously we can't commit more than a week, right? And you dedicate yourself to the start of the week saying, okay, I want to find out when my high energy point is in the day, when I'm, the most productive. And I mean, it is self-awareness again, I do get that, but what you do is anytime that you notice, and it's hard, of course, but you notice that you're, productive, you write down the time for this week, right? And then what you find is a pattern will emerge of when your most productive time is. And then that. So for example, for me, I know I'm at my best probably around 1 p.m. For me, it's after like my second dose of meds, so that's probably why, but it works across the board. So I then know that if I've got to do something particularly ADHD challenging, or that I have to focus on for a long amount of time, or anything like that, that the best time to do that is in that period where I have the most energy. And you can do that across the board. You can do that for any sort of habit, really. So energy, and then time tracking is a similar thing, but it's because obviously we have time blindness, right? So we, like I said earlier, we don't have like a normal perspective of time. So what you want to do is, if there's a task, and this is very entrepreneur based, but if there's a task that you have to do regularly, so let's take Instagram, for example, making carousel posts on Instagram, which I do a lot. When I go to make one, I'll start a timer, and when I'm finished, I'll stop the timer, and I'll write down how long it took, and I'll do that for a week, and then I'll add it all together and divide it by how many there are to get the average amount of time that it takes me to do that. And then I know for the next week, if I need to make 3 carousels on an average, it takes me half an hour to make a carousel. I need to put an hour and a half aside next week, roughly, to make carousels. Does that make sense? Whereas before, I was just like throwing carousels whenever, panicking, like, they're all over the shop.
Right. Yeah. So forcing organization and math with the you're just giving me a math problem. Like, okay, so if she's doing this many for this many, and it's
not as complicated as it sounds. I literally, like, you just write down, like, let's say you do it for 3 times and it takes like 30 minutes and 40 minutes and 50 minutes. You just add them all together and divide it by 3, because that's how many of them there are. It's not that hard. I'm going to write you a post on how to do it.
All right, perfect. And then there was another one I saw, one of your posts about, and I'm not going to get this right, and it was a while ago, but oh my God, I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that helped so much. And it was like, I think it was like sort of like taking breaks or only doing a certain amount of time. It had to do with time, but it was like 5-minute increments or something like that. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. So I never remember what I've posted, obviously.
Either.
I have 2 around 5 minutes, and one is the 5-minute rule, and the other one is the magic 5 to-do list. So
yeah. Okay. Tell us about that. I love that. Those were 2 really good hacks for me.
Yeah. So that's actually, now I think about it, that probably is my favorite one. So the magic 5 to-do list is basically in the morning, when you're writing out your to-do list, so like the normal recommendation is to do the hardest thing first. And that is terrible advice for ADHDers, because we don't have any motivation to do that. So what you do is you write out your to-do list, and then you write a 5 next to anything on that to-do list that will take 5 minutes or less. And then you start with those for the day. And what that means is within 30 minutes of you starting that to-do list, you've done like 6 tasks for the day. So like the to-do list is less, so it's less intimidating, but also like you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Like, you're an ADHD who's already done like 6 things, and it's like 10 a.m. Like,
yeah,
that's a strong point for sure. Yeah, I love that.
I love that. I love it too. The thing is also, though, do we burn out quicker?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So if it's something that you're like, again,
well, not right, about, of course. Yeah.
But yeah,
if it's like a task that you have to do, like you said, 6 things on the list and blah 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 blah. shit, man, I'm like, I just burn out. If I don't like it, I burn out so fast. And then I just say, F it. And that's why I think maybe they say that we're great starters.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I'm exactly the same. If especially like if it's something I don't want to do, like even on my medication, I'm like angry, and I get like more and more angry inside about it. And so I'm literally just like swearing at my laptop, being like, I don't fucking know I have to do this anyway. Like, so like,
Yeah.
kicking off. I wish I had a hack for that, but unfortunately, that's sort of our reality, you know. There's ways to get around it, but I can't give you a magic potion at all that's going to make you like doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, no,
Wish
and
I had,
that's
but-
not an ADHD thing. Like, again, that's just a human thing. People don't like to do what they don't like to do. We just don't like it more
We just
than
don't
most
like
people.
it more. Yeah.
Great minds think alike. So, all right, listen, we've had technical difficulties, and I don't want us to crash. And also because of the ADHD, I can never keep my podcasts over like 35 minutes because, first of all, who the hell wants to listen to my ass up more than that? Anyway, I could listen to you all day though, seriously, because I just relate so much. Now, you were talking about you're a musician, and that's not surprising.
Yeah. Used to be.
But you have something coming out, don't you? You have new music coming out.
I do, yeah. So, and the reason for that, that song, so back before I was like doing all the business stuff, I was like big into music, and I recorded a song. It's called Too Many Thoughts, and at the time I thought I was writing about anxiety because I was undiagnosed ADHD. And then about 6 months ago, I was listening back to it, and I was like, this whole song is about ADHD. And I just like at the time had no idea. Like even the chorus, Too Many Thoughts, like
Oh my God.
come on.
Yeah.
And then we did the last week we did the ADHD 24-hour event on Clubhouse for, again, in recognition of ADHD Awareness Month. And within that, there was a time slot for music, and I was like, I'm just going to play this. And it just like resonated really hard with like, obviously like the 80, 90 people in the room. And now they've all been asking me for it. So I figured I was just going to release it. So yeah.
Release them. Definitely get it out there. Yeah. And if someone wants to, so if somebody wants to get the proper like diagnosis to see, you say just go to a psychiatrist. That's where you go.
Yeah. So it depends on where you are in the world, obviously, but in most Western countries, I know in Australia and the UK, you see your GP first, and they give you a referral to a psychiatrist. But it's a painful process. I'm going to be honest. Like the wait times are ridiculous for a couple of reasons. First of all, because more people are getting tested, but also because psychiatrists don't tend to specialize in ADHD because ADHDers don't tend to turn up for appointments.
Right? They can't make it. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
It's actually terrible because like it's almost like that's the point, but like at the same time, it's just like, yeah, that sounds right. And then I mean, I don't know for America, but I know in Australia you have to have 2 appointments before you can be prescribed medication if that's the route.
Oh, not here.
Yeah. Well, here definitely they're very very strict about it. It's all like really like tracked, like really intrinsically.
Well, yeah, they definitely track you can't like doctor shop anymore. Here's another thing for the addicts anymore. We can't doctor shop anymore. It sucks. I loved it. I go to every doctor and get a different medication from every doctor. I have freaking 10 scripts of Adderall from 10 different psychiatrists. You can't do that anymore.
And you shouldn't. But yeah, so there's yeah, I mean, it really is different in every country, but it is hard. Like when I first went to get diagnosed, I thought that they were taking the piss because they sent me like a 10 to 15 page form to fill out, and I was like, is this the test? Like, if you can't finish this form, does that mean you have ADHD? Like, I was just like, and like, I was clicking through, and like the pages just kept going, and I was like, I need this to stop forever. So it is really different, but I would say regardless, start with a GP, trip for a referral if you need a referral in America. But yeah, definitely see a psychiatrist and see a good one. Like get one that's like recommended that specializes in ADHD, because as I said,
very important.
You want somebody to look into you to properly, not to just like assume, because it's a complex condition and it literally could be so many more things, and you want to make sure you're getting treated for the right thing to like live your best life. So that would be my opinion on that.
Yeah. Awesome. And it's so true. I remember when I got my first, when they tested me for AD, they called it ADD then. They didn't even ever have the age. This was 80. Wait a minute. I wasn't born then, right? No. This was friggin' 1987 or 6 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, rub it in. No, hey, listen, I've earned every single wrinkle on this face. Oh, wait, I don't have any wrinkles because I have so much Botox. I can't even move my eyebrows. Look, literally.
I'm actually getting my first Botox next month, so excited.
It's, well, yeah, you know what? It's preventative. I mean, don't need...
There's a filter on Zoom that is just all of this. I worked that out so quickly. I was like, I'm not putting makeup on every time I'm on a Zoom meeting. I work from home. Like,
yeah.
I'll send you a picture afterwards. You'll see why I need Botox.
But no, literally when I took the test, just like you said, the test was so many pages, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't. And I mean, things were so different then. And I remember literally the psychiatrist looking at me and being like, yeah, you don't have to take the test. You have it. But I'm just kidding. I did take the test, but I mean, like,
and also it's quite a trigger. It's really intense. Like, I don't know if that's the case in the US, but also be aware if you're listening, I don't know, in Australia or the UK or whatever, that some of the questions can be pretty triggering if the answer is yes. So like, I remember being asked, like, have you ever witnessed a murder? Have you ever witnessed a sexual assault? Have you ever been partial to? So like, and they don't really warn you of that. Like, I mean, I haven't experienced any of those things, fortunately, but I'd imagine if I had, that question would have been like, what the?
Really? True.
Like, that is really intense. Like, warn a person. So I am wanting to be that warning for everyone. I don't know if it's the case in the US. I'd imagine it's similar though. So, just be a bit vigilant around knowing that it's very in depth, and because they're testing, and I know why they do it, because
they want to make sure you don't have other stuff.
Real similar. So you can have, if you've experienced something, and I hope none of you have, but if you have, and it's been extremely traumatic, that presents the same symptoms quite often.
Do you feel this is hereditary? Because my son has it.
I know for a fact it's hereditary.
It is.
There's a huge genetic link. And like the amount of time, so my mum's still in denial by it, but she's like the most ADHD person I've ever met in my life. The other day she rang me and she was like, I just invested £1,200, she's in the UK, in a wine company. I was like, you've never invested before, you know nothing about business. She was like, yeah, but I saw a Facebook ad and I get vouchers. Like, you just pay £1,200 for vouchers. I was like, what's the thing you use to invest? And she was like, I don't know, I can't remember. But I was like, how are you going to check the investment? She was like, oh, I don't know, it'll probably be in my emails. And I'm just like,
it's like that viral TikTok where it's like, wait, where do the taxes go or whatever? Oh, to the you know the one I'm talking about, don't you? Do you know what I'm talking about? That's what it reminds me of.
Honestly, but yeah, so quite often people who have children, they get diagnosed, and about 2 months later, they get diagnosed themselves. And the reason for that is it's like this kind of annoying thing where parents see their kids behaving a certain way, don't get them tested because they have ADHD, and they're like, that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Everyone's like that. Like, you're
normal.
like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, like, chances are high that if you have ADHD, you're likely to pass it on. Yeah. So not a bad thing though. I love ADHD personally. So like,
we're such colorful people. I mean, the two like ADHD and addicts, those two
never boring.
Yeah, exactly. We're just very colorful, creative souls, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of positives to it. As long as you're getting, the right management, and you've got that self-awareness, and you don't hate on yourself too much. Like, there's, like you say, creativity, problem solving, empathy, outside the box thinking. Like, we're great public speakers. We're social. Like, people love ADHD, but like, people, like, we have an energy that like comes out of us that's infectious. Like, there's a lot of positives to an ADHD diagnosis. There really is. And it's about mitigating the challenges and focusing on the strengths, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'll never be a cleaning lady. That's for sure. I can't clean.
No, same. I know it. So there's an ADHD who I know who runs a cleaning business. And it's great because it's so funny, and she's really cool.
She must be great at it because that's her passion. That's her radio show or your, like how you are, you know, video game.
But she's funny because she like hyper focuses on cleaning other people's houses. She's on Instagram, Fairy God Nanny. She hyper focuses on cleaning other people's houses, but on her Instagram, she's like, this is what being ADHD owning a cleaning business looks like. Don't have time to clean my own house. And it's just like pure ADHD. And I love it. So authentic. And it's beautiful.
I've learned a lot of great things from you tonight. I have. And I know that we've helped a lot of people. Is this a mental illness? What do we call it?
It's a neurological disorder.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, not in my, like, factually.
No, that is fact. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's not a mental illness. Addiction is. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like sort of seen differently, country dependent, but it is a neurological disorder. It's just a brain that's wired a bit differently. That's all it is.
Yeah. I'm doing this thing now. And one with it. It's called TMS. Can you look up what that stands for? TMS.
Is that the shock thing?
Did you see it? Yeah. It's not
really
shock.
good.
It's like a Woody Woodpecker pecks on your brain, and it can reconnects the wires. But
I've heard really good things about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, really good
Have you? Yeah, for depression, but have you for ADHD? Because I asked them and they said no.
I don't. So I honestly don't know about the.
Yeah, no,
ADHD.
it's not for
the
ADHD.
same thing as it was the depression thing.
Mhm.
Is what I heard about it, and but the results apparently for depression have been fantastic, and I think it's definitely worth looking into if that's
Good.
the case.
Well, no, I'm on treatment number 5. It hurts. It's a pain in the ass. It hurts your head. I get my head pecked every day for 25 minutes, and
Well, that Botox just moving around.
yeah. I love you.
I can say that because I'm about to get it. Okay.
That's right. All right. Well, you're a light. Tell us your Instagram handle. Not like you need any more followers, because I think you have everybody. But
I don't have everyone at all. But so if you do have ADHD, it is the_ADHD _entrepreneur. So pop in, DM me too. I love chatting to people and hearing their experiences. So drop me a message, drop me a voice note though. Like, let's be real. Don't write me like 5 paragraphs. Anyone who follows me on Instagram is listening to this. If you've been ignored, it's because you've written me 5 paragraphs. It was not a realistic situation. Just short sentences. Like, please, I love you guys, but short sentences.
oh my gosh, you have no idea how good it feels to talk to you. Someone that gets it, really. I am always voice texting people on Instagram, and I actually got yelled at the other day from someone, like one of those, like, Clubhouse sometimes can be a little snotty. Some of them, not snotty, but some of them can be like a little like high school cafeteria, you're not allowed at our table kind of thing. And this was one of the you're not allowed at our table women, and I had to ask her something, and I voiced it, and she's like, I can't listen to your voice text. Can you just like regular text me? Because I'm like really busy and on Clubhouse all day. I wanted to be like, okay, guess what?
Maybe get off Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Maybe have a look at yourself in this message.
Yeah. Then guess what? You don't get to talk to me because I voice text. Okay. So
sorry, I can't read your text right now because I'm on Clubhouse.
I can't read
I'm a big fan of voice notes. It's just what we do. It's how we process information. I usually, if you're in my like DM requests, 9 times out of 10, unless I'm really busy, I'll reply with a voice note. And it's just more personal anyway. Like I like it.
Yeah. I gotta hear the voice. Well, we already know about how I write. Well, no, that's spelling. It doesn't matter what you're texting, but whatever. Anyway, bottom line is, we're done. My ADD's kicking in. And
we're finished.
We're finished. I can't even tell you how much I enjoyed this. Like, I love you. You are just friggin' a rock star. You're awesome. And
thank you. It was a pleasure. I loved it too.
Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing, man, because people need to know this stuff, and keep doing what you're doing. I will see you around. I'll see you soon. And this has been Sober Exposure, the ADHD edition. Thank you so much. Need more? Of course you do. The show's all about needing more. Go to my website at soberexposure.show or get stuck on my Instagram at soberexposure_podcast.